Hello and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Jill Bodensteiner, Director of Athletics at St. Joseph's University. As leaders, it's really important that we're clear regarding our goals and our vision and how those integrate into the greater university goals. We also need to collectively create a strategy and a culture that are going to help us reach our goals. This is an evolving exercise that requires an openness to continuous improvement. That's why I follow the One Question Leadership Podcast, because I love learning as much as I possibly can from my colleagues that helps me be the best that I can be. So my message for the day, keep learning, keep leading.
Greetings, this is Tai Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at OneQLeadership.
I am joined today by two veteran coaches here. I got Coach Mike London. Mike London's been coaching for over 25 years, currently the head coach at William & Mary, of course, national championship with the University of Richmond a few years ago. Also with Coach Glenn Caruso. Coach Caruso is the University of St. Thomas, and Coach Caruso is sometimes a guest host with us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast. He'll do some asking too with Mike London as our guest. Greetings. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen.
Happy to be here.
Yep, same here. Thank you.
Now, Coach London, I have you on because you get to William & Mary 1 year in, right? What I've always wondered in terms of a coach coming on with an athletics director there, you have to learn each other, right? The communication process, the habit of communication, and how do you learn how she likes to communicate. Samantha Hughey there at William & Mary, has she learned how you like to communicate? And then, of course, the season comes and coaches are usually unavailable, but you still got to keep up the communication with the athletics director. So she's the leader, she's your report. Tell me about that process, learning your athletic director.
Well, obviously, you know, your reputation is built on the things you've done consistently over and over in your career. And there are some people in the paths along my journey and her journey that we both know. There are people that we trust in the profession that you know that can give you guidance and information about who an individual is, what they're all about. So those factors enter into it. And then you have the opportunity to actually meet and talk and visit and find out about, you know, what's the why of an individual. And so I know early on in the process of leaving Howard and beginning discussions with Samantha Hughey at William & Mary that we just talked about like who I was as an individual. It wasn't even about the football part of it, because as we tell players, you know, obviously our identity gets tied up into being a football player, but you're going to be a husband, a father, an employee. You're going to own a business, be a president of a company much longer than you're going to be a player. So we started talking about the things, the foundational things of being a husband, a father, a friend. Where else have you been? What's your philosophies on leadership? We talked about those things first and built that bridge to segue into being a head coach of a program, basically not trying to replace a legend in Jimmy Laycock, but trying to add to a perspective in terms of William & Mary being a great world-class institution, having great facilities, and now having a chance to build on an opportunity to compete for championships in the arguably, FCS strongest conference, and that's the CAA. So it was first we talked about just similarities, and then we continued on with philosophy. And then, it just became, she just said, listen, I want a partner in this new adventure. And we agreed upon a lot of things, very like-minded and similar in some approaches. And that's how that all started.
Right. And then as you go on through the year, I guess it was around this time last year when you got the job. And as you go on through the year, tell me about how the communication has evolved in terms of how often do you talk, text? What's better, text message?
It's constant communication. Yeah. And again, she understands the moments and the opportunities where it precludes me from having that constant dialogue, particularly during competition or practices. But it's an open and it's an honest relationship where she'll say what's on her mind and me having the freedom to also express those things and the concerns that I might have. And it's rare it's rare in this profession to have that kind of relationship with an athletic director, or the dialogue that's necessary in terms of understanding, from where she's coming from and where I'm coming from. And as a coach, we always talk about our assistants, knowing that I answer to people that are constituents, stakeholders. So whatever the issue might be from a coach to me because of a player or whatever, a head coach also has to understand that an athletic director has to answer to people, that are over her, the stakeholders and the constituents that she deals with. And when you have that type of a relationship where she can express her concerns and what she's dealing with, I can express mine, then it opens and lends itself to honest and open communication. And so that's been really critical and really important. As the season went on, whether it was text message, she knows my wife. She's been at my home. We talk from the standpoint of not just from athletics, by growth and human development, mental health, wellness. So all those things are like-minded people like to associate themselves. And I actually like Samantha because she's very similar to who I am and what I believe in. I am a high energy, passionate, let's go, and she's very much like that as well. So those things lend itself to having a relationship that you feel very comfortable about.
Right. What I do know about you and what I know about her is you guys are lifelong learners in terms of always trying to improve yourself and the people around you. She has professional development, gives books to staff and does things like that, and actually considers one of her mentors somebody who's probably 20 years younger than her in the department. And I wonder about when you came on and you realize all these things about the person you report to, about staff development for you and your staff, but then also the aspect of community engagement, right? When you get to a new program, and you probably can talk about this too, when you take over at a new program, now you want to learn all the constituents on campus. You want to learn the community to make sure your staff and your players are heavily involved as much as they can and time allows, to make sure that we're not just athletes here, we're also students and we're also a part of this community. Tell me about that aspect over the last year, how that's become.
It's important that when you transition into a new environment, establish new relationships, that people don't care about you until they know about how much you care. It's important to me that the academic component of all the places that I've been, that I've coached at, that it's very much involved with the term student athlete means exactly what it says. So bridging the gap between what's going on over on the other side of campus, it's important for me to go to walk in on a class where my guys might be, so the professor knows that the standards of the team are go to class, show class, treat people with dignity and respect. If you're going to exemplify what the standards are, the head coach on down has to make sure that, do I class check? I sure do. Do I walk across campus so they see me walking across campus knowing that I could show up in a physics or English class? That's important. But also the dialogue with professors in terms of, I'm not looking to change or influence grades. I want them to know that if they're not attending their class, it's going to affect their ability to play and practice. It's going to affect their ability to get that swag Under Armour stuff that they wear. So, so it's important to establish those type of relationships with the faculty rep, with the provost, with the dean of students, because if they see coaches or the head coach has a vested interest in the educational process of these student athletes, then they know that they have an advocate, for them as well. So it was really neat to be involved in a community that embraces the academic expectations of every student, but particularly a student athlete at William & Mary with the APR being as high as it is year in, year out, the graduation rates, the people that have gone on and done great things with their careers, a la Mike Tomlin and Sean McDermott, two William & Mary guys. So it's been really neat just to kind of watch that school can be cool, and you can embrace the expectation of becoming a student athlete fully vested in what a professor says, but also when it's game time to perform on the field to 100% of your ability.
Yeah, Coach, you've outlined pretty clearly a lot of the things that you're learning in year one. And I've always been a big believer when you're changing a culture, or in your case, improving a culture, because the culture there is certainly wildly impressive over time, that the growth between year one and year two is really a true indicator as far as not just the direction, but the acceleration. I think a lot of that is because when we come into a new situation, we have thoughts and ideas in our mind of what we want to do, how we want to implement, the people we want to surround our team with. But in year one, we get a really neat opportunity as a leader to sit and listen and learn. And when you learn about what the university needs and wants and has to have and how that applies to football, the coaches that do a really good job with their culture are able to move that into a growth in year two. How do you see the growth at William & Mary between year one and year two? And what have you learned in year one that maybe you didn't think about going in, but you're going to utilize moving forward?
Well, obviously, every new situation is based on relationships. I'm a highly relationship-oriented person. And, again, I go back to when you have a vested interest and you invest and spend time with individuals, and you get a chance to know them. So the process, the early on dating process, was you come in here with your standards and the things that are important to you, but they got to know you and you got to get to know them, because there's particulars and peculiarities and specifics about who individuals are. So if you can demonstrate being consistent in what you're saying, these are your core values, these are the things we believe in, and if you walk it, talk it, live it, then it's important that when they see that, not only from myself, but from staff members, because it's an ongoing process, and once they see that, this guy he's talking about faith, family, football, or he's talking about go to class, show class, treat people with dignity and respect. If those things can be exemplified, day in, day out, through the tough times and through the good times, then their perspective of the culture that they were in starts to change, and you start to attach yourself not only to their hearts but to their minds and to their emotions. And then when that happens, then you have a chance to change a player's trajectory in terms of which way he's moving. I was reading a book, and you talk about leadership, growth, and development. I'm a John Gordon energy bus guy. You get the right people on the bus, not only on the bus, but sitting in the right seats and getting the people that don't belong on the bus. There's another bus for you. It'll take you to where you want to go, but it's not this bus. And so surrounding you, that's a leadership model that I have. I no energy vampires. I'm a glass half filled guy. Over the years, I've been a police officer, in the city of Richmond, and had a gun pulled on me, the trigger, it not go off. I'm still sitting here. I've been a bone marrow donor to my daughter. I saved her life years ago through a bone marrow transplant. When the doctor said the odds that a parent would be a match for their own child were like 10,000 to 1 million. I heard all kind of numbers. So I look at the opportunities from a glass half filled, so what, now what? All right, what do you need me to do? Roll your sleeves up, let's go. So that's an approach. And over the year that I've spent at William & Mary, we lost a player. I mean, we had a player that was murdered. And dealing with the depth of Nate Evans and going through the lowest of the lows, but also players seeing that, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna be disappointed. I'm gonna be, we're gonna galvanize together. We're gonna figure out a way to figure out how we can improve with mental wellness, with mental health. When I ask you, hey, Coach Caruso, how you doing? And you walk by me and your eyes are down, your head's down, I'm doing all right.
Tells you something.
And I keep on walking, shame on me. If I ask you, hey, Coach Caruso, how you doing? I'm doing all right. No, tell me, how are you doing?
Right. Wasn't a rhetorical question,
That's right.
Yeah.
What's going on with your situation? Because we will check off a box as soon as he said, I'm doing all right. No matter whether the eyes, the head were down and the shoulders are shrunk, whatever. So I'm kind of very highly aware of the mental wealth and the health of our players, the student athletes. We're in a profession as it is already. I remember when I was growing up, my mom, I'd be at practice. She was a cheerleader mom, and I'd be at practice, and I'd come over the sideline, there'd be blood on my finger. I'm like, Mom. She's like, that's all right, just suck on it a little bit, throw some blood on it, get back out there, you'll be good.
You're welcome.
It was that mindset. But as time has evolved, we are dealing we're in a different time, a different atmosphere in terms of how we deal with things. And I think we put mental health and wellness on that same page. You'll be all right. Okay, everybody feels like that. You'll get over it. I just, having gone through this year has made me a better person, which I hope to make me a better coach, but also understanding people better in terms of where they are. Because I can't assume where Coach Caruso is until I take off my shoes and I try to put my feet in his shoes. Because you can't do that. You can't assume.
Impossible enough.
And so that's probably been the biggest lesson that's been exemplified. I'd hope that my players saw, and that's probably been the biggest cultural shift and change of where we are and where we're going.
Well, that depth of character and depth of knowledge of who these young men are, who we're working with, and who we are that they get to know is huge. And on that John Gordon tip, because I think every coach at some point runs across it, it seems inevitably that when you talk to a year 1 or year 2 coach, the book is The Energy Bus, and it's the vampires and get off the bus. And, we actually read it as a team, and it's fun. But I would implore you to also, moving forward for the folks that are listening out there, The Carpenter is another book, beautiful parable, and it talks about the process of building. But to your point, Coach London, he did it wasn't even a book, it was just a podcast about an hour long, and it was called The Life Word. And it started from a small story he had of the word of the year. And it implores us all to think about what that young man or woman's life word is. If there's to be one word that is going to be on your tombstone, quite literally, what is that going to be? We have our children do this, our children, and it's amazing at what it forces them to get at, and it gets at the why, who that person is. And I'm sure that's something you touch on quite a bit.
Definitely, and it's great that you mentioned that, because one of the things we just talked to the staff about what's going to be your word, your life word, and mine is encourage. The Bible talks about encouraging in so many different ways, but just in life in general. Again, fellas, the gun didn't go off, and I'm sitting here. You're the match for your daughter. She's going to grad school. So my life word is encourage, because having gone through this season with the player, losing a player and having to embrace his mom and put him in the ground, and then now you got to deal with the aftermath, and she's still going through her issues, but the players who are friends with him, it's like it's an ongoing process. It's ongoing. And my word is encouraging, because not only do I need to encourage the players and coaches, if that's my word, and each coach is going to share what his word is, then I pray to God that one of them is going, you know what, coach's word is encouraging. Let's make sure we encourage him too. Because as you know, as a head coach, we are constantly pouring into other people's glass.
It's tough.
And sometimes you're like, not that you're looking for, where's my water? Who's going to pour into my glass? But you're not, because you're so busy going around and filling up everybody else's. But it's like, if you just spend time on doing and servicing others, then I believe that the man upstairs says, listen, I got you. And so along the way, a player that has a revelation like, your coach, I was a knucklehead, but thank you. Just pour it into the glass. A situation happens at a previous job where you might have thought was unjustified, or whatever it is, a relationship. Then years later, it comes back and somebody pours into the glass like, Coach, that opportunity led to another opportunity to where you are now. Pour into the glass.
It's all good.
Forget about, don't have any animosity. Forgiveness is key. Growth and development, are you of the fixed mindset or the growth mindset? Learning those things, and that as a coach, we always are constantly evolving.
I think the players often help out with that, and to your point, I say routinely, the more you're charged to be a mentor, the more difficult it is to find mentorship. And if we're called to be in the position we're in, that's where he wants us right now, and so be it. But It does get difficult, and one of the great resources that I see is our players being able to fill that, and they don't even know it. Like, to your point, they don't even know it. And I think when they realize, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at, I wish this was actually a video podcast, because as I sit here and I watch one of the great coaches in our country, one of the great leaders, have a tear trickle down his face in an interview, as I just saw from you 2 minutes ago, it's not what you are and what you do, it's why you do what you do, and that passion that I guarantee the players can feel. And when they can share it back with you, now we got something good.
Yeah, that's a great point, Coach. And so, you know, just life lessons, as you know, having been done this as well, 25 plus years, that those aha moments, and I use an illustration. There's a picture of a guy in a tiny boat who's rowing to a guy on a tiny island. And so life is perspective, perceptions, and realities. So we live in a world that the guy in a tiny boat who's rowing to the guy on a tiny island is like, boat? Or, you know, look at this little tiny island I'm getting ready to roll up on. I've been out here and I'm going to roll up on this tiny island. And the guy on the island is like, I've been on this island, and that guy in that tiny boat, where are we going to go in that tiny boat? That's a perspective and a perception that somebody has. I am like, boat! Yes, I've been on this tiny island. Here's a guy finally is bringing a boat. Land! Yes, I'm in this tiny boat, and I get a chance to get on and stand my feet on some solid ground. So on the other side of it is like, oh man, good gracious, boat, you know, land, as opposed to, yes, boat. And so it's hard to, that's part of the personality of the new culture. Life is full of, so what, now what? Okay, your first team and second team quarterback got knocked out of the game. What are you going to do now?
You're playing at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
Right?
What are you doing? The tickets are sold. The band's playing. Let's go. What are you going to do? And so it's adapting to those things and knowing that you're always going to have an opportunity to make a difference about how you act or react to a situation. And they're watching us as players. Now, Coach, when we go in the room by ourselves and we close the door, you might throw something, really big guy, what's going on,
Yeah.
you know? But then when you open that door, people want to see is he in control of the situation? How we're going to handle it? Is he demonstrating, you know, the faith family football or the treat people with dignity and respect standards that he espouses for the team? He's going to represent the president, the AD, you know. So having been a head coach and knowing that we're responsible for coaches on our staff, is we have to bring them along to that mindset as well, because sometimes we all act differently. We react differently. But if you want to try to keep being consistent with what the program is, and let's face it, there are some assistant coaches that they need, you know, hey, listen, let's go, man. This has got to get done. You know, we're always going to have to go back and keep trying to, you know, to make sure that they are understanding this is the example we want exampled. And the players, if there's a player that doesn't want to go to class and he keeps demonstrating that, dude, you're not going to be on the team. This is not the place for you. If you can't treat people the right way, that's women, that's anybody else that's, that's not involved with our team, the professor, the dean of students, somebody in the community, then this is not the place where you want to be. This is not the team that's going to embrace what you're doing. There are other places that will embrace that. This is not, so.
Well, I'll say two things here. When I am blessed with the opportunity to mentor young people, especially college students down where I live, I tell them these two things. The first thing is that a pixel, right, is just a dot, and a line is a series of dots. When you're young, each dot is a moment in your life, and the celebrations are high, and the challenges are high. You think it's the worst thing in the world. But as you get older, you zoom out and you realize that that line is just a line of life, and that there will be another dot. There may be another dot, right, if you're blessed. And so you don't get so high and so low, and you move on. So that has brought me to my philosophy on what you're talking about, going through the death of a mother, getting fired from jobs, stuff like that, which is that the key to a peaceful existence is to master the ability to adjust accordingly, right? Those last two words, adjust accordingly to what you're dealt with, right? The ups and downs of life, the challenges, you learn from them, you embrace them, and you keep moving forward, right? And I know you've dealt with some of those things too, where you're up at St. Thomas and in life too. So.
We have. And just to recognize that not only is it our job to understand that, but that we got to find ways to find the positive in everything. So whether it's a trigger being pulled and a bullet not coming out of a barrel, whether it's your 10,001, whether it's in our situation, you wake up on Christmas Day and your mom's dead and there's kids in the house and the dad's got to change things, or you come home and Rachel, my wife, is diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer. Those are all things that, none of those things would I want to go back to that moment in time and wish them on ourselves again, but that's not our job. So let's be really clear about that. And the more we can understand that our job is to respond to life, not to control life, then we can look at that mosaic that you're talking about, that line, and realize, look, this is a bad dot. That bad dot might be the gun. That bad dot might be dropping the post route, missing the sack chop, getting a penalty, your wife having cancer, whatever it might be. But let's at least recognize and realize that over time, as long as we're willing to look for the positive and work, once we pull back, it's going to make for a beautiful mosaic, because I've never seen a mosaic where every single tile was the same exact color, right? It's going to be all different. We got to recognize that.
The line of life.
My opinion.
Gentlemen, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you, Coach London, joining us with your standards. Go to class, show class, and treat everybody with dignity and respect. Of course, Coach Caruso, I appreciate you co-hosting the podcast with us here
Love being
on
with
One
you.
Question.
Thank you,
Great.
Ty.
Thank you.
Love it.
Appreciate it.
That was Coach Mike London. He's the head coach at William and Mary. And, of course, Coach Caruso, who's the head coach at University of St. Thomas, which is in Minnesota. And, of course, I'm Tai Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.